Welcome back to my channel, everyone. I appreciate you coming back. I appreciate you telling other people about this website, that they can see things that will help their life. I'm pretty sure that I'm giving information that if the public would go along with it, we would all have a better life than we have now. And this one is going to be PO3. This is the third one of my 10 to 12 videos on public opinion and the political outcome. What I want to do now is to add a couple other things. I have talked about them before, and I want to emphasize them a little more than I have in the past, and that is responsibility. Now, by responsibility, I understand from the way that we're doing these videos, it's because public opinion always does have an impact on the political outcome. Now, another issue that I want to bring up is winners over losers. People come up with ideas, and if they get the rest of the public to go along with it, they think they are a winner. And if it dies in the wool someplace, they think that was a loser. Now, there's always people coming up with stuff. Daily, we hear things that people didn't know about before. And just a rough example like that would be in Turkey, where they have found the oldest, basically man-made structures that we've been able to find throughout the world through the archaeology. And what we found out now in this year, 2025, in Turkey, some of these areas have found that it is now an area where they thought was just a palace or some kind of a worship center is actually a residence. It shows places where they had meals, where they lived, and things like that. So it's restructuring what we thought we had about humanity and how our beginning was. Well, I'm not surprised by this. As I've said in some of my past videos, I feel that I am a Philistine, and the Philistines have been used many different names. The word Philistine came up during the time just as Israel is getting started. At the time that Moses supposedly left Egypt and went into the wilderness for 40 years after getting the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, the Philistines pushed off of Crete because their power had been diminished when the volcano took out over 99% of them. So less than 1% of the Philistines were left. They joined with Israel. Some of them were part of the boat people because they were coming from Crete and other islands around the Greek Isles at the time, and they were trying to regroup from the destruction the volcano did when it took out Thera. And as I said before, that is exactly what Plato wrote about when he talked about Atlantis, because Atlas Island is what he referred to it as, because he was saying that the Philistines were holding up the world, and they in fact were, because I'm going back to the structures in Turkey when they started. That is one of the names that the Philistines were probably called by. And we call that one of the areas that Egypt had a fight with when they fought the Hittites up there in Turkey. Now, if you look at the Hittites and you look at their land wasn't only Turkey, but it went down into Lebanon as well. I did see some other videos on the large stones that were moved, and people are absolutely confused by it. But if you think about just being logical, which is what I try to be, people that knew how to cut the rock in Turkey that would just leave posts standing so they could put a roof on it, and then they would have an indoor dwelling. And as I said in my other videos, it was also a gathering place for hunters and gatherers to come and take a break from their hunting and gathering. And they could stay there for a short time. They could enjoy the beer that was being made by them and buy grain that they could take with them and then make bread when they were in need of it, or take the flour from the area. Now, I've talked about this. This isn't rocket science. I didn't get this from anyone. It's just logic, in my opinion. Logic 101 says, who would have known how to do those things? Well, now they find out that we have hundreds of tons of rocks that are perfectly cut, so smooth that it would be difficult for us to do it. Well, they did it because we have it. And now they're realizing that for a long time people thought it was part of the Roman building. But no, Rome just built on top of what was already there. And people are starting to realize that these buildings were, these large rocks were piled up by people that know how to move large rocks. And they talked about it would take something like 100,000 men to pull the blocks. No, it would probably take 10 or 12 elephants to pull the blocks. And I already said, we don't have to guess anything. Plato told us when he wrote about Atlantis that they had monkeys and elephants on their island. Well, Thera was the island they had, and the reason we know that is in Santorini, which is right behind it, when they excavated and they found the building structure that had indoor plumbing that was covered up totally by debris from the burning of the volcano and the incineration of all the people on the island of Thera left 75 to 100 foot of ash on top of Santorini. And so when they excavated under that ash, they found this building, and they also found a painting of what the island looked like before it got destroyed. And that was Thera. And if you look at that and you just read Plato's writing, everything matches up perfect 100%. So you don't have to guess or speculate about much of anything because it's all right there in front of you. All you have to do is put two and two together and you have the answer. Well, that was 12 to 14,000 years ago. We have some problems now that we need to correct and get the answer under our belt. And what it has to do with is the Muslim Brotherhood, right after the First World War, they basically started spreading their lies and misinformation and created what we call radical Islam. Now, another little irony about that is we know now that there never was a Muhammad. There never was an Islam. So anyone that says, I'm an Islamic person, or I am part of the Islamic religion, or any of those comments, they're lying to you because there never was a Muhammad. They're believing in a Disney story. It's like them seeing a Disney movie, thinking it was reality, and now they all express it to each other. And part of that reality is what the Muslim Brotherhood created, which was the destructive part of Islam. And Islam, as I said before, is just a separation from Christianity. And as the years went by, the separation got so bad, they started calling themselves Islamic because they wanted to differentiate themselves from Christianity. So they says that they're Islamic. They created a lot of Islamic followers. They had a financial system that helped benefit acquiring property, and the Ottoman Empire then grew until it was a very substantial country with a lot of followers. And with the attitude they have of a little bit of what I'd say terrorism, they would tell people that you have to pay us money if you want to stay alive. And if you did not agree with them and contribute to their finances, they would either steal it from you or kill you if they had to. So this was a nation that had no problem with destroying other things. It did help them for a lot of years. They had a strong empire. Unfortunately for them, they aligned themselves with Germany during the First World War. And when Germany lost that war, Ottoman Empire went down with them. And so there was England now took over their land, and they have never gotten over that. And a lot of them now are getting an idea that they need to join the attitude of the Muslim Brotherhood to terrorize people so they get what they want. So now in this public opinion and political outcome, we have to do something that I said before. And that is, I'll use the United States of America, and everyone can apply it every place else. When you take an office to serve in the United States of America, you have to pledge allegiance to the Constitution of the United States of America and its laws. So that means that any Islamic law that does not align with the laws of the Constitution of the United States of America, and you want to live by those Islamic laws, move someplace else. Because if you go to America and you continue to express your attitudes that you have about Islam, they are all wrong, notwithstanding the fact that you're lying in day number one. God's got a sense of humor. At the time that they think that the Islamic people are going to grow, they seem to be shrinking, because with the internet and the women realizing they're being terrorized by their religion and they want to get away from it. They want to be in anything other than what they're living now. And so they're leaving Islam as fast as they can. And with the internet doing what it's going to do, it's going to continue to take them down. But even the ones that are going to stay in there are actually a little bit misguided. Because when I use the word that I told Hawaiian Honey I would not use, I won't call them stupid, but I'll say they're senseless. They're not logically coming up with what they think they believe. And all they have to do is look at the information that we have gained. They made a critical mistake that cannot be corrected. When they made up the idea, any place from 75 to 120 years later, that they wanted to be a different religion than the Christian God, and they decided someplace along the way they needed to have a prophet, and they made up the prophet and used the name, which was a title of Christ at that time, which was Mama, something of that order, because they had no vowels. So when they started adding the dots to it, you could add any number of vowels. But without the dots, you don't know which word they're saying, because I think there's 8 or 12 different combination of dots that they can have. So that means there's 8 or 10 different words that word would be making if you were going to really put it in logic today. And since you don't have the dots to tell you which one it would be, you don't know what word it is. So there is absolutely no historical record that an individual lived at the time they said in the place they said he did. Now, at the time they did it, the place was a fairly substantial city, and they started making all the mosques point to Medina and in Saudi Arabia, and that's where all the people go to worship Muhammad. The mistake they made was when they invented Muhammad and they made up all the things that he did, they put him in a place that did not exist at the time he would have had to live. So all the things that he did with his life didn't happen there because there was no city there at that time. They can never fix that problem. It just is absolute, irrefutable proof that the whole Islamic thing is a total made-up thing. So if you treat it like a lie, it's like saying, I'm going to hire Mickey Mouse to come to your house. No, you can hire a guy that's in a Mickey Mouse costume and pretending he's Mickey Mouse, but there is no Mickey Mouse. It is a fantasy of Walt Disney. And Walt Disney made a lot of money with Mickey Mouse, and he has a lot of what we would call is adult playgrounds for us to go to. And we have one here in Southern California called Disneyland. It was the first one he built, and I've also been to the one that he built in Florida, although he unfortunately passed away, I think, before that one was actually open. But he did have a lot to do with it, and I think he passed away just before it opened. But the fact that you talk about, and you can go to Disneyland, and you can look at images of what Mickey Mouse was like when Walt started painting him, but there never really was a Mickey Mouse. It's all made up. That's exactly a parallel to Muhammad. He never existed. He was all made up. So anything that a Muslim tells you is a lie. It's not true. And so when they lie to you to try to get you to be on their side, that is a problem as well. Now we're having that problem in the United States of America now. There are people here who are basically giving support to Hamas. You know, in America, we believe in free speech and want people to be as free as they possibly can. But it means you have to obey the laws. And what needs to happen in America now is they need to make a law that if you have said anything and it encouraged anyone to do something that is against the law, and they do that act, like for instance the people that went into the trade towers and knocked those down, the people that have said that they were inspired by the Muslim religion and they murdered people, if you have said anything that person heard, you are a co-conspirator of their actions. And when they kill someone, you need to be available to be arrested and put on trial. And if it can be proven that you've said the things that they claim that they believed and relied on when they murdered someone, you're guilty of being an accessory to the fact. Now, that is a law in America. It's a law to prohibit people from encouraging people to do things that are wrong. And it's wrong for one human being to think he has the right to murder another human being. So in this one of PO3, I want to push the idea, and we need to get on board for it right away, responsibility. If you want to be a legislator, you're promoting Hamas, which was in the ones that did the problems that killed 40 Americans when they attacked Israel and murdered and kidnapped all those people. If you support those people in any way and express that verbally, you're not eligible for public office. Public office says you have to support the Constitution of the United States of America. And the United States of America says you have free speech. But if your speech encourages someone to do something that's wrong, you are a co-conspirator. And if we don't start doing that, if the prosecutors don't start charging people for doing the kinds of things, then people are careless. I did vote for Donald Trump because I figured between the two people running, and one of the two is going to get elected, that Donald Trump would do less trouble for America than the woman that was running. She was clearly a socialist. She was going to damage America as much as Biden and other presidents have done, and we don't need that. We want presidents that do the right thing for the economy, and that is to have competition, have everyone free to do everything they can do as long as it's not corrupt and illegal, and create companies that make money and hire people. That's what makes our economy prosper. Now, the United States of America, the people doing the companies now are not the ones that created it. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and all the founders of the United States of America made an important decision. The important decision they made was that when a person wants to be a political person, he has to make sure that he is not doing it under religious conviction. He has to make sure that what he's doing is he's doing it because he is thinking it is a good political thing to do. And by political, I mean how one Homo sapien treats another one. Now, I'm still on board that we haven't made our women totally free, and that needs to be done. Every legislator is failing their duty for not doing that immediately. They should not be elected. Any voter that listens to this, you don't vote for anyone that doesn't say he'll uphold the Constitution and make freedom in America for everyone, men and women equally. The idea that men are superior to women and have to take care of them is a fallacy that I lived a lot of my life by, and I'm sorry I had to do that. But that's what I was taught when I was young, and I believed it until after my wife died. I then began to realize when I started doing my videos and talked about the Philistines, the only thing that I could see that made the Philistines so superior to every other nation that has ever been on the face of the planet, including the United States of America, are the Philistines. And that's because in Turkey, they did the work there about 10 to 12,000 BC. And if you look at the stuff in Lebanon, they think that happened around 9 to 11,000 BC. They don't know. They haven't been able to time it accurately. But with the pottery and so forth they found and the carbon dating, they come up with those kinds of times. Now, that Philistine people were trading throughout the entire world. And I say throughout the entire world because what I realize now is that there is a picture that is 2,000 to 3,000 years old on the walls of Egypt. Down underneath, in all the tunnels that they have, they found one. And on that picture, it is a map. And on this map, it not only shows that Africa and all of the European countries, it also shows North and South America. So that means that the Egyptians, around 2,000 to 3,000 years BC, knew about America, about the United States of America, where it would end up some 2,000 to 3,000 years later. But at that time, we thought Columbus was the one that discovered it, and evidently not. Because if these people knew about it more than 1,000 years before Columbus was born, then it was not Columbus's thing. He just accidentally ran across it because it was in the way of where he was trying to go. Now, did Columbus have rumors that this thing existed? He may have. And when he got there, he may not have been that surprised. He was just saying, well, I'll be darned. those rumors I heard were true. There was another country here, and there's a lot of people here. So we don't know what the truth is about everything historical, but every day we're finding new things out about what our forefathers did and endured. And what we know now is whoever started in Turkey carving out those rocks, and as I said, what they had was a rest place for the hunters and gatherers to come and stay for a week or two and have food there supplied for them. And when they left, and beer, food and beer, because we know from what we found, that's what's in the pots. They were able to make beer back then. So you just have to realize what people like, and a lot of people like to drink beer. It makes them feel good. And the hunters and gatherers would not have been any different, and the women would not have been any different. They would have enjoyed it as well. So when you follow those people, it's very logical. The same people are the ones that live for the next 200 or 300 years, or even 1,000 years, that went down to Lebanon and were able to move those big rocks. Now, we don't know when they started using elephants, but I would say that between Turkey and Lebanon, they realized they had already gone into Africa. They had people in Africa because Egypt was a going country at the time, and Egypt is in northern Africa. But when they got into Africa, they would have seen the elephants. Now, they might have been in India as well, because I know that we think that civilization started down at the mouth of the Tigris and Euphrates River, and we call that the Fertile Crescent. And up until just recently, we think that was the first city that ever existed. And as I said before, it was just about 1,000 years too late, because the Philistines already had a trading empire that went all the way from the Scandinavian countries because of the amber, all the way to India because of the spices. So we had spices coming out of India by the Philistines, or whatever name they changed. But after 5,000 or 6,000 years, it could have been called several nations. You know, as the people go from one place to another and they intermarry with the people in the local areas, the DNA will someday identify who the very people were in the beginning of Turkey, and you will see that that DNA followed the people all the way in to Lebanon. It followed the people all the way into Egypt, and it followed them all the way into South America. As long as we're Homo sapiens here, we need to do what's right for each other. And the attitude that the twisted Muslim people have, that they have a right to do evil to another human being, is totally wrong. Have I said before, there is an absolute rule. You don't do to other people what you don't want them to do to you. So if you find people that are doing that, you need to put them in jail and do it to them. Whatever they're stealing or whatever they're doing wrong, make them accountable for it and steal what they have, and put them in jail until they change their mind. If they never change their mind, they need to be in jail, but they need to be working. So those things I've always covered before, and I've covered them again, and I think I probably have gone my 20 minutes. So I'm going to check that out, and if it's true, I will come back to you when I can. But this one will be the end of PO number 3. And I will come back to you with PO number 4 as soon as possible, but within a month anyway. I'll make sure I get about one to you every month so that there's enough of them that they get around so people can learn what I'm having to say. But for now, this is the end of PO number 3.